Testing, testing, testing. Okay. I think it was a gift. Holiday gift. So it sounds like all right. So if we just like sit, I'm gonna sit right over here where the mic is, and here we can just start talking while we're. I'll do the show introduction, and then um. Okay. All right. I'm gonna quiet on the set. Five, four. Hey everybody, welcome to our debut episode. Jon+Tam GAM. GAM stands for Gaming and Assorted Media. Or no, it stands for Geek Assorted Media. Hey everybody, welcome to Jon+Tam's GAM. Welcome everybody to Tammy and I's very first podcast, Jon+Tam GAM, Geek Assorted Media podcast. I am your host, co-host, Jonathan, and here's my girlfriend Tammy. Why don't you say hi to our lovely viewing audience, Tammy?
Hi everyone.
Yeah, so this is a pilot episode. We're just we're getting a feel for things. We're stretching our legs. We're just experimenting a little bit. It's not I wouldn't call it our very first official episode. For people who don't know, a pilot is basically something that airs. We test it out to certain people, and if people like what we have to say, we'll keep going and we'll do a more professional format. It could be we could be doing this once a week. We could do this once every other. I think bi-weekly would probably be the goal for now. If we're doing this regularly, if we're seeing each other, we do see each other at least every weekend. So we could shoot for every weekend, if not every other weekend. Just depends on our schedule and what we want to talk about. So what this show essentially is going to be about. I mean, we've both been expressing interest in doing a project together like this because it's something she's always wanted to do. I've experimented. I've dabbled in a show here and there. I've done, I've written blogs. I've done some interviews for viralhair.com. I've experimented with doing a podcast before, but I have not been able to have a consistent basis for doing a show like this. Our topics are pretty general geek centric stuff. Pop culture, uh, nerd stuff, video games, anime, movies, TV, comic books, music, just whatever's on our mind. It's just a more of a general kind of talk show kind of story. Maybe we'll have a guest once in a while. In the meantime, though, we'll just I think we'll probably focus on three topics today. Obviously, I think we want to talk about. We will talk a little bit. We want to do some Superman spoilers, what we thought about the movie, and what we've also did some like Superman catch up. We watched Man of Steel. We went to Smallville. We could talk about what Superman shows we did watch and compare it to this version of Superman with David Cornsweat. And then we'll also talk about maybe some upcoming plans like trips and other and other whatever's really up whatever's on our mind we'll discuss. So what do you think? What do you think, hon? Do you think we should start with Superman? Is there anything else you want to talk about first?
No, we can start with Superman.
So yeah, we went to a Thursday showing at the Metreon AMC in San Francisco. I hadn't been there in years. Like it is still like a tower. Whenever I sit like in the middle of to front row, it is just like massive, massive screen. Like I've seen some big screens in other big cities. Victoria, British Columbia had this huge AMC. I saw like a short film there, and then there was also one in New York, in the Lincoln Theater. AMC Theater is pretty big too. Like it is seen just in any movie with that kind of budget. IMAX just there's just no experience like it. I know there's 4DX, there's Real 3D, there's a bunch of other formats, but for me personally, you can't. I mean, do you remember the last time you saw a movie in IMAX? you were 21 in high school?
No,
I'm just giving you a hard
15,
time, buddy.
15, 20 years ago. Oh yeah, in high school. I
20
forgot.
years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Avatar in 3D at that same cinema. I feel like I've seen one other movie after since then. I can't think offhand what that movie was. I do know I went to an IMAX when I lived in Antioch. There was the Brentwood AMC theater, and I saw. I think I saw one of the Marvel movies there. I forget which one, but all right, Superman. So we both posted a review, and I think Tammy wrote her very first ever movie review for on social media. And I write movie reviews quite a bit. I've written several reviews for a few movies on Viral Hair, particularly DC movies. I remember going to an advanced screening for The Flash in May of 2023, and because I knew I wanted to write for Viral, I wanted to be one of the first to write for Viral Hair. Wanted to be ahead of the curve because I don't get I'm not big enough to get invited to like the press junkets or the movie premieres or anything like that. I think the earliest I've seen a film before it came out probably was The Flash. Um, Before that, like I think I got invited to like a Wednesday night midnight screening for Suicide Squad 2016. So I don't really get invited. I mean, I could have gone to the Amazon Prime screening for Tuesday, but I don't think our schedules would have worked for that. And I think I was I also didn't know if I was going to work that week because with my schedule, and as of this coming week, I'll be working a 5-day work week schedule for the next foreseeable future based on my assignment for the job. But prior to that, my assignments were all over the place. I never knew where I was going to work. So Thursday made the most sense to me, and I think we both enjoyed it. So how do I? So okay, how do I? So it's so what makes the movie good? I think the heart of it is you appreciate the nuance, you appreciate the influence that James Gunn did for this movie. If you know a lot about Superman, if you read the comic books, if you've seen the shows, seen the previous films, there is a lot. It's hard not to compare because Superman is a very unique character because since 1978 we've had about 7 Superman movies. Since 1966 we've had about 9, 10 Batman movies, and since 2002 we've had 8. Well, we had 8 live-action Spider-Man movies and 2 animated Spider-Man movies in the theater. And if we're counting animated, only 1 Batman animated film and Lego Batman film. So Batman's had about 12 movies, animated and live action, in the theater. And I don't even think. I mean, the closest Superman had to a animated film in theaters, I believe, was The League of Super Pets, and he's not really a character in that movie. He has a few cameos. So this is Crypto's second movie, technically, like his first live action. So, I think what really resonated with the film for me was it just kind of took a lot of the best parts of Superman's history and incorporated it into this film. And some parts you couldn't compare to. You can compare to Christopher Reeve's Superman. Some parts you can compare to Henry Cavill's Superman or Tyler Hoechlin and obviously Nicholas Hoult. James Gunn has said Michael Rosenbaum's version of Lex Luthor, and that's the one show that Tammy's watched that's consistently she's watched through because it's Superman. All right, let me ask you this, Tammy. How does Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor compare to Michael Rosenbaum?
It's similar, but the one in Superman movie, he's more evil.
Yeah, I mean, because I can't think of time. Again, this is spoilers here. I can't think of a time where Michael Rosenbaum just shot a guy. Just I mean, he's done some pretty effed up things. I mean, he took his own father's heart so he could resurrect himself. I mean, he's also done. I mean, there are some terrible things he did in the comics too, but I think what makes that one more sympathetic is you can kind of see the influence of how his upbringing was because his dad obviously if you ever seen the movie Dewey Cox, his father's very much like Dewey Cox's dad, and we did see Dewey Cox a few weeks ago, where Lionel Luthor for like the first couple seasons was like the wrong kid dad. That's pretty much you gotta love John Glover, and he's a DC veteran. Whether we're talking of like he voiced the Riddler in Batman the Anime Series. He played Jason Trudeau, the scientist that created Poison Ivy in Batman and Robin. He was also Shazam, the Dr. Savannah's father in Shazam. So the guy, Lionel Luthor, and will we see Lionel Luthor in the because it's called Luthor Corps. It's not called LexCorp. It's called Luthor Corps. In the comics and other previous adaptations, the only other time I remember, and there's other times too, but predominantly the only time I remember it being called Luthor Corps was in Smallville. So, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, what are the odds we see Lionel Luthor in the DCU? An 8? Yeah, I can see that. I don't think I don't think John Glover will reprise his role as Lionel. I mean, he could. I mean, he'd be a very, very old father. I mean, he was. I mean, when he was the villain, his father in Shazam, he was. I mean, maybe his grandfather, maybe, or his uncle. Yeah, maybe he could play Uncle Lex. Maybe his uncle will be named Lex. And then maybe as a little joke, he'll call him Lenny, like in Superman 4, and the Lex Luthor mythos, and like because you got John Cryer who played his nephew Lenny Luthor in Superman 4, and then he eventually 30 years later plays Lex Luthor in the CW. So there's always kind of like an interesting full circle, and you got Brandon Routh playing Superman Returns Superman, and then he played Superman the Crisis CW crossover. And then so there's a lot of cool. That's what I really like about. That's one thing I'll definitely say I like about Superman is the veteran casting, like Nathan Fillion, who plays Guy Gardner. And people who know Nathan Fillion. So love him or hate him. He's worked with a lot of the best of Josh Whedon's projects, Firefly, Doctor Horrible sing-along blog. He's also a DC veteran. He was the primary voice of the Green Lantern in the cartoons, Hal Jordan, and he voiced Steve Trevor, Wonder Woman's love interest in the Wonder Woman anime movie, which is my least favorite portrayal of Steve Trevor, but he's a great Hal Jordan. And then let's see, and then the guy who played Mr. Terrific, I forget the actor's name, but he played Darwin in X-Men First Class. And Tammy's not as she hasn't seen a lot of superhero movies. I think might have seen Iron Man. She might have seen a Spider-Man movie, maybe an Avenger here and there. But if I mention X-Men, I don't know how many X-Men movies have you seen so far? I don't think it's the one with him in it. The guy who played Mr. Terrific. He played the Darwin. He has which is funny because Darwin in that movie has similar powers to the guy we saw in the Pocket Universe, Metamorpho, where the guy who created the rocks. It's funny. Mr. Terrific played a character in X-Men that's similar to the character that Superman was. So I don't know. That's kind of a funny little. Just shows how metahumans and mutants are relatively the same as one another. And then let's see, because some of the things, so a lot of the positives I have are just like the heart of the movie, where we have a lot of sentimental moments with, I liked how they handled his relationship with Lois, and they kind of tease this a little bit in the My Adventures of Superman cartoon too, where they're not sure if they're right for each other, and that's always been kind of a thing where, cause sometimes Superman's not always with Lois in other media, the comic books, other shows, but kind of like with Spider-Man and Mary Jane, in the comics right now, for the last 18 years, it's been from 1987 to 2007, Spider-Man and MJ were married, and they were happily married. Their marriage wasn't perfect. They had their ups and downs. They had to go to couples therapy. It wasn't always perfect, but as of 2007, it's gone from marriage to the marriage has become annulled because of that piece of garbage person, Joe Quesada. He erased their marriage, and now Peter Parker and MJ have had an on again, off again relationship for the last 18 years. They've been boyfriend girlfriend longer than they've been married. I mean, which is fine. It's everyone's relationship is different, but when you have that happen to you, it's fiction, whatever. But with Superman and Lois, it's always been like there was a period where they weren't married. Superman was dating Wonder Woman. Lois was dating. I don't know who she was dating. And then even the Christopher Reeve films, they never really ended up together. And even with Spider-Man 3, their relationship was left ambiguous until No Way Home. Um, with this Superman and Lois, I feel like it is kind of closer in line with what they do with Adventures of Superman, where they feel like a real couple. They deal with the problems in their own way. They have their own personal insecurities and navigating. I think both Tammy and I could also relate to that, where we both have had to navigate futures with people, and I think our navigation led to each other, which I'm happy to do that with her now. And I don't know. Do you like? I don't know. I guess I don't know if this is. This, I don't know if I should be asking this, but do you feel? Because I feel like I'm Lois Lane and you're Clark Kent here doing all the questioning. But do you feel anything between Lois and Clark's relationship you could identify with, like whether it's with you or me or the past or anything like that?
Not that I can think of, but the thing is, she like him for the way he is. Because I like you the way you are. She never want to change him.
And that is the key to a relationship, because sometimes you know whether we're because sometimes partners that we've like based on the partners we've talked about, they do set certain expectations out of us, and sometimes we meet those expectations and sometimes we don't. And the fact that we don't set up expectations for each other, I think that is a key to a healthy relationship. By the end of the movie, I do feel like they've reached that place where they don't set certain expectations for each other. They accept each other for who they are. They know she knows what he has to do with Superman. He knows that she needs to feel validated for her work, because obviously one of the biggest issues from the beginning of the movie was he was Clark was interviewing himself. It was kind of a it's the same problem people might have with Peter Parker can easily take pictures of Spider-Man like from the best angles that no one can, because he's the same person, and that's like, oh, that's cheating. I mean, you gotta like Peter Parker and Superman are not Batman. They do not have the same income. They do not have a 9-10 figure income like Batman. They have to hustle for a living. So if they have to cheat the system to make money, like I am not going to fault them for that at all. Like, admit it. At least 60 or 70% of you that are listening will would have probably done the same thing if you were in their situation. So I can't really fault them, but they should, the fact that he was like, hey, you know what, you're fair point. Um, we should you should interview me. I do want to validate you as a reporter. I do want people to take you seriously, and and then the interview doesn't go the way he wanted it to, and I think it also made them question some things, and it was very realistic in that portrayal, and I do it's I think a lot of people can identify with that scene. Whether you're in a relationship or you just got out of a relationship, it probably hits harder for you if you're like imagine. I could only imagine if I like had if I had seen this movie before I started going out with Tammy, like if I was single and I was seeing it, it would hurt, because like I was just in that, and now I'm kind of like, now that I'm in a relationship again, just kind of like I see that relationship they're going for in that screen. I'm like, yeah, that hit home. Like it definitely hit home for me. And and then not even by the end, but by the time, the moment that the big shock of Clark's biological parents, how they have kind of like they had like an authoritarian, totalitarian viewpoint of Earth, you know, because we're used to, like, at least in the movies, we're used to the 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 House of L being a place of good, but that wasn't always the case in the comics. The Clark's adoptive parents have always been the ones that he gravitated towards the most. They're the ones who raised him, and granted, it's not his biological parents' fault. They die in an explosion, but one could imagine if the planet didn't blow up, how would they have raised him? I don't know if they would have raised him better than the Kents, because the Kents are very much like our own family. Well, I don't know. I can't. I mean, I can't speak for Tammy's family. My family, I could definitely feel like, hey, you know what? They are way of a certain way, but they support me and they love me and my brother, and like they're maybe Clark's parents aren't the sharpest tools in the shed, but they're like, we're proud of you. We like that you become the man you are, because because not every parent, not every kid lives up to the expectation of a parent, and for Clark, I think I don't know. I guess he definitely is a Superman that like longs to seek validation from people, and he doesn't have to. He always Superman's always been a confident character, but because of the context of how the world is viewed in James Gunn's lens in this film, you kind of understand why Clark's the way he is, because everyone is just kind of just jaded and cynical, and he's like the one guy who are like, hey, I want to be a good person, and I wish there was more good people out there, and there are, because I mean, look, the Justice Gang, they're good people. Guy's kind of a little bit of a narcissist, but I mean, they definitely do it. They're definitely good, because if you'll see, the thing is, if you're going to be a Green Lantern, you have to care about saving people, because you can't, because otherwise you're not going to get the same color ring, because there's rings out there with the full intention of if you're an evil person, you get like the red ring or the yellow ring. Like it's like with kryptonite. There's good kryptonite. There's bad kryptonite. There's good power rings in Green Lanterns, and there's yellow lanterns, and so there's a lot of different ways you can be. He could be a bad person, but he's not. This guy Gardner is definitely good. And they're all and Isabel Merced is a good, definitely cares about being a good person too, even though she's green, and not like Guy Gardner green, but she's a novice, and she's still trying to get her ducks in a row. She's still trying to learn how to be a hero, and because she's the youngest of the team. And so yeah, I guess that's my next question for you. How do you feel about what was your opinion about the Justice Gang
My opinion?
of the Justice Gang?
Oh, I guess game. I wouldn't expect them to be in the movie because they cost Superman. But any hero, if you want to be a hero, you like to save people. That's all I can think of.
And I know that's been a big criticism of this movie, that it feels like a sequel to a first Superman movie. My argument is it helps in that it stands out, because we've seen the Superman movie where he works alone. There's no other heroes getting involved, but it makes sense in the context of, if being a superhero has already been well established for centuries, not just decades, centuries at this point, then it makes sense to have other heroes around, But then, like, well, how come we don't see the Flash, or why is it just Eve? The Flash is busy doing his own thing. Batman is busy doing his own thing. I don't know which version of Batman, but Wonder Woman, they're all busy. They all have other. They live far. They don't live near Metropolis. These are Metropolis natives, so they live in Metropolis. So therefore, they do superheroics primarily in Metropolis. Um. So, and then I guess that my biggest question is, 'cause I saw your review, and you said this Superman is actually fun this time, and I don't think that was necessarily to throw shade at Man of Steel, because you did like Man of Steel. So okay, let me okay. I'll ask this question: what did this movie have that you wish what that was in it that Man of Steel had, and what's something that Man of Steel didn't have that you wish it had but Superman had?
So you want me to say
So what's something about Man of Steel that you liked, that but didn't like about Superman? What's something about Superman you like but didn't like about Man of Steel? I'll give you an example. Like in Man of Steel, I think for a like for a blockbuster movie, I think it did its job to entertain me. I think there's definitely different avenues of Superman that we've never really explored before, which I do appreciate. But I feel like it needed more of it's really a movie. If you're somebody who's never seen Superman but like know what he's about, what he's like, he wears his heart on his sleeve. He genuinely has more priority of helping people. Then he's still like that. Superman still struggled to fully embrace being Superman, whereas I feel David Cornsweet does do a better job at being comfortable in his own skin, being Superman. Whereas I feel like there aren't a whole lot of new avenues with David Cornsweet that compared to Man of Steel. I feel like there is like a grandiose, deeper context, of themes of having a savior complex, and having different messages, and which message resonates with you more with like being raised by having different father figures, give you a general idea of who they want you to be. And there's a little bit of that in this, but yeah, I would say for Man of Steel, I like that it tries to do different things with Superman, and I like with this Superman, it takes us back to like a Superman that has earnestness and is compassionate, and I feel like there is a lot that Henry Cavill's Superman did have it's his struggles with having like the compassion he needed to have. I think that's a fair assessment. Would you agree with that, or do you think there's more to that?
I agree what you say so far. For Man of Steel, he tried to do the right thing too, just like Superman. He tried to protect people. That's a good thing. So far I can think of. He never give up on helping fighting with Superman. And the cool thing is he can fly too. That's all I can think of. But for a stuff that I don't like about him is he kind of serious.
And out of the three, because I mean those are the three predominantly Tom Welling, Henry Cavill, David Cornsett. Those predominantly the three Supermen you're the most familiar with now, because you haven't really seen the Christopher Reeve films. I don't think you've seen Superman the animated series. So those are the three. So out of those three, how would you rank them? How would you rank? I'm going to take a guess and say Tom Welling's number one, David Cornsweet's number two, Cavill three.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I would say Corn Sweat for now would be number two. Cavill's number one because I feel like he definitely he has this I don't know, he has this kind of stoic like persona of Superman that I kind of appreciate. Um, he has this presence about him that makes me think like if Superman were like real, I could see that. And then Tom Welling, he was kind of a Superman of like the 2000s, and but in the best way. I don't know. This Superman might not work today because also that story kind of they really kind of like throw a lot at you, and they kind of do a lot of all this stuff before his actual official career as Superman happens, which like I guess I can respect for being different, but like I would have preferred maybe they eventually just let him be Superman, like by the like the seventh or eighth season. Um, but that's just a nitpick. I definitely enjoyed uh, I enjoyed all of them. There's no really bad Superman for me personally. Because I think every actor gives their best performance that I've seen him in, whether it's the cartoons, whether it's live action TV, live action film, Lego Superman. Like I don't think anyone actually ever really half-assed the role. I think they all like give it like their A game, even in something as bad as Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Christopher Reeve did always gave it his all. I felt, and especially David Cornsett. Like he came out with an interview saying like Brandon Routh or Henry Cavill didn't really have notes for him for Superman, which I mean, which is great because that means he has to really come in on his own, which I think what Superman actors should do, because it's not like Kevin Conroy voiced Batman and went to Adam West and Michael Keaton for advice. He just kind of went in, did his own thing, and many people consider Kevin Conroy's version to be the quintessential Batman, even to this day, especially after he passed away 3 years ago. He's the quintessential version that people are very influenced by, and a lot of you could see some of the performances in today's Batman movies. Like they kind of have that earnestness to them as well. So yeah, overall, I can't. Yeah, I mean, there are some things. I mean, like some of the jokes didn't always land. There were some jokes that were funny. I feel like because it's like a comedian. It's like a comedian. Like even I can love 80% of the time a comedian's jokes, but there's always like that 20% of the time where I just didn't think the joke landed. I know it's happened with like sometimes like imagine I don't know if you ever watch roasts of celebrities, but sometimes when a person comes up and roasts a celebrity, sometimes the joke doesn't land. Like I remember talking like about I think the roast of Pamela Anderson, where Gilbert Gottfried like had some funny jokes, but then he did one with a genie, and yeah, it did not land. It's like it just did. Maybe it worked for somebody, but for me, like, so it's like that. Like with James Gunn's jokes, like 80% of the time the jokes work, but there's like a good solid 20-25% where the jokes do not work, and that's true for every joke. Some jokes, some people will find some jokes funny, some people won't find jokes so funny. So overall, I can't really think of anything else I want to really talk about Superman. I feel like I've already like spent like the good half of this podcast discussing what Superman like means to me and what this version of the film. And I mean, oh yeah, I did want to quickly touch upon the film's box office, because in the grand scheme of things, why do fans need to care about box office? Didn't we enjoy the movie? Is not what's important to us. Why do we care? What about the stock, like a company stock, or how much company's movie makes, or ticket sales? Well, a, a lot of fans do on some level need to care, because if a movie doesn't do well, then it doesn't mean we're going to get more of them. And in the case of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've had a couple of string of just like maybe not flops, but films underperform. Like this year alone, Captain America, Brave New World, and Thunderbolts both made around 400 million worldwide, which for a normal movie would be fantastic. But the MCU like movies, like I feel like the benchmark for their success would be like 500 million, and like only like 3 movies since the pandemic have, or 4 movies, or 5, 6, about 6 movies out, like half their movies have been able to pass that 500 million benchmark. But so with the MCU, you have to, there's a certain expectation what these movies makes, and they're just not, and we'll see with Fantastic Four, maybe, because I've seen the tracking go from anywhere from 120 to 150 million domestic. I don't know what the tracking for worldwide will be for that. Some people think it's going to make $1 billion. I personally don't think, because all tides all tides raises all ships. If Captain America 4 and Thunderbolts like aren't passing 500 million, I think Fantastic Four will pass 500 million. I don't know if it's gonna like. It could very well make more than Superman. I don't know by how much. I don't think it's going to be a dramatic amount. Like if, like for example, if Superman ends up making like 600 million worldwide, I could see Fantastic Four making 750 million, which I guess is kind of blowing Superman in the water to a degree. But like, some people are like, no, 800 million, no 900. The prob This is one of the things about comic movies that's really been kind of a point of contention with the last few years. Like, people like are like, every conversation I have is about a film needing to make $1 billion, or needing to make this one in the $1 billion. Like, I think, like, right, what, only 60 65 million films in the history of cinema in the last 125 150 years have made $1 billion. It is not an easy thing to do. Like, for certain films like the Marvel films, because they had a 10-year legacy with the Infinity Saga. Like, yeah, some of them will cross $1 billion. Spider-Man No Way Home did. Deadpool and Wolverine did. But these are established characters, and they've been established in big name movies. Like, a lot of that has to do with the Avengers, and Spider-Man himself is in his own right a successful hero. Like, if Avengers never existed, Spider-Man would still be a successful franchise. I mean, look at the Spider-Verse films. The first in the Spider-Verse movie made like around 375 million. The second one made 690 million, like almost three times what the first one made. So Spider-Man is a huge bankable name. And you have seen some of the Spider-Man movies. I don't know if you've seen Spider-Verse or not.
I don't know. I could see the first two Spider-Man.
Yeah, so the Sam Raimi ones, and some people have compared the Superman to those films, and that's a fair comparison, I would say. Um, so this idea, and I know, Tammy, you don't really care about all this stuff, but I, for me, I feel like I do want to make sure a movie's successful, because that means I'll know if, because like let's because the thing is, if I was like a general audience person, not really, like, that doesn't really look at box office numbers, I would be like, I'd be going 3 years like, hey, that's that I remember that Superman movie. Are they ever making a sequel to that? What's going on with that? I would be like, I would like to see another one. It's been 3 years. Usually a sequel comes out in 3 years. I wonder what happened. Like back in 2007, I was not looking at like box office numbers like that. Like, I mean, I think I heard through the grapevine, like, oh, I heard it did well, but to the degree of like, oh, like, I was always waiting for like maybe a Spider-Man 4 announcement. I know they were working on a Spider-Man 4. I heard about that. I'd always imagine what the next film would be like, but they just went with a reboot instead, which I was like, I get it. Tobey Maguire's getting old. I mean, they want to keep Spider-Man in his like 20s to early 30s at most, so I could make sense as to why they made a new one. And that makes sense for a lot of hero movies like Batman, James Bond, Mission Impossible. All these movies have to recast because the actors get older, and they have to like make a new story out of them. It's just because they are viable at the box office, they keep making them. So that, like the Disney remakes, the Lilo and Stitch, and a lot of the Lion Kings and Aladdin's, the Cinderellas, all these movies continue to make money because they're established brands. People love them. Because right now, I don't know if you pay attention to Lilo and Stitch's box office. Right now, it's pretty close to $1 billion, and I know you like the film, so like, in I could tell you, they are, like, you heard they're going to make one next year. But when I tell you, hey, Tammy, Lilo and Stitch made $1 billion, a new one's on the way. How does it make you feel as a fan? Like, you feel happy that other people are enjoying it, that they've made enough money where they can keep making them? Like, what goes through your mind when you hear Lilo and Stitch is $1 billion movie?
Oh, I feel excited and happy as a fan. Can't wait till the second one come out to be better.
And then but if it doesn't make $1 billion, it's not the end of the world for you, right? It's just like,
No.
as long as it made its money back, and you can see another one. That's all you really care about. Fans really, it's like become a box office become like a pissing contest. And for the first while, I was like, I really wanted, because Marvel, because I was somebody who would look at numbers and go, man, like Avengers made $1.5 billion. And that's actually one of the reasons I did not see the first Avengers, largely because a lot of people were seeing it. I thought theaters were going to be full all the time, so I never got around. I was waiting until the crowds died down, but it made so much money, I was just afraid to go to the theater because so many people were seeing it and I wanted to have like a normal audience attendee, and I didn't know when that was going to happen. So I didn't see Avengers, and I was kind of not uncertain about Batman. I waited until like the bargain theater to see The Dark Knight Rises because I wasn't sure when there'd be less people seeing it because these movies were making so much money. I was just afraid because I'm not somebody who likes to be around too big crowds because I was before COVID times I was nervous about, like, I don't know, how do you feel about crowds in theaters? Does that bother you now, or because I know people have a different perspective on it because there were times where only a certain amount of people were allowed in the theater, like only 25-50% full allow. Now everything's just kind of back to normal.
Crowd is not too much, like 100, 200 is okay. Too much, then I get exhausted. Yeah.
So yeah.
Everybody's different.
So right now, Superman's made about, currently in its opening weekend, 217 million worldwide. Pretty good in U.S. Domestic means U.S. and Canada. Overseas is like other countries. Overseas, it's kind of not. It's not doing strong numbers, but domestically, it's doing okay. Superman is much more popular. Superman and Batman are predominantly more popular in the United States than overseas. Marvel just seems to be a global popular. Disney, as a whole, is a global popular brand. Like other studios, Warner Brothers, Universal's, but while they might be closer to Disney in popularity in the United States and Canada, their popularity dwarfs them by a lot because of all the theme parks, because they are an iconic brand. People know what the Mickey Mouse ears looks like. They know, if you tell somebody in Hungary the name Walt Disney, they'll know who that is right away. And Superman is kind of like, as a hero, you can kind of say, but like, yeah, I mean, people, if you say, what's okay, if you said what studio is uh, a Toy Story, you say Disney or Pixar, right? If you said the Iron Giant, I don't know, what studio do you think did the Iron Giant?
I think it was Pixar.
Warner Brothers. But
Oh
Brad,
yeah.
but I can see why you said that because the Iron Giant, the director Brad Bird, went on to do the Incredible movies. So I could see why you'd make that distinction because Brad Bird is, yeah, Iron Giant's a Warner Brothers animated film, but I mean, like, that's because Disney is such a big name, and and Marvel's attached to Disney now, Star Wars is attached to Disney now. The movies are going to make, just because it's just from being Disney movies alone. Like before, Fox was bought by Disney because Deadpool and Wolverine were Fox movies. Deadpool and Wolverine comes out, makes $1.3 billion,
Well,
and I feel like if it wasn't bought by Disney, I don't think. I mean, it would have made like maybe 900 million, maybe a billion, but because it's Marvel Studios, because it's the Walt Disney Company, and it's the first rated R Disney movie, so that's a pretty big gimmick. It goes on to make that amount, and Wolverine and Deadpool were popular brands separately, so obviously together they make a good amount of money. So Disney is a powerful brand, and so for people to have these expectations that DC should be making what Marvel makes, yes, but a lot of studios haven't been able to match the success of the MCU. 37 movies, I think combined, all 37 movies have made around $20 billion at the worldwide box office, and everyone else is like a distant second, third, fourth, fifth place. I think DC movies collectively are like in the top 10 somewhere, but the you know, but I think there is always that possibility that DC Studios could be on Marvel's success, especially after, I think for this. I think the biggest litmus test is because the next film's set in the DC universe, the DC cinematic universe, Supergirl, and then Clayface. Those are the next ones that are coming out, set in the same world as Superman. And then you also got the show Peacemaker, and those, because you saw Supergirl in the movie. Does seeing, okay, on a okay does seeing her, like, being introduced in Superman, does that, like, because I don't know if you knew if Supergirl was coming out next year or not when people were seeing this. Knowing that her movie's coming out next year, does seeing her in Superman, did you like Supergirl? Seeing, I mean, she was only on screen for like what, 2 minutes, but did you? But she left a good impression. I mean, she's like a party girl, likes to.
yeah.
She's obviously going through some stuff, and she has like a Crypto is kind of like this emotional support animal. Um, and also Jason Momoa is going to play a different character, not Aquaman. We should see Aquaman. I know, yeah, I know it's a movie that's on our been on our radar, but we'll definitely see Aquaman before we see Supergirl because he's playing another character that's a different DC Comics character, Lobo, which is very popular. Like he's kind of like Deadpool in space a little bit. Like picture Deadpool and Beetlejuice combined. That's who Lobo is, and he's in outer space. You could easily mistake him as a Guardians of the Galaxy character. That's the next movie. So seeing Supergirl in this movie, you liked her fine. Like, do you see does seeing her make you curious to see her movie next year? Crypto is there, Jason Momoa's Lobo is there. It's this Beetlejuice Deadpool hybrid. What's your interest level at
My interest,
in Supergirl?
if it could rate it as a give 5, I would see it. Just see how she is as a hero.
So right now, and then when and maybe that number might change once the trailer comes out. I don't know. And I would guess Comic Con is when the first Supergirl trailer might, or at least a teaser might drop, because it's coming out in June of next year. That's a ways away, but usually 6 8 months before a movie comes out is when you want to drop your first trailer. Sometimes they drop a trailer over a year. I remember the first time they did a Batman Superman teaser was like a year and a half before the movie came out. But it made sense because that was the first time Batman and Superman were on the same screen together. And you that's another movie you like too. And um, here I'm gonna run to the restroom really quick, but like I don't know, maybe if you want to keep talking about Superman, if you want to change the subject, um, you're live. The floor is yours. I'll be right back.
Okay. Let's see what I want to talk about. Let's continue talking about the movie Superman. I would talk about Superman top.
heard a little bit of what you're saying. You're saying like the top three things you liked about the movie. Um, yeah, I mean, um, I like the relationships of all the people that he's with. I like, even though he's not like crazy about the dog. I mean, I can kind of compare. I can kind of see parallels between. He's kind of grown a little fond of him a little bit by the end. Like, I don't know, kind of like how I feel about Nushko. Like, I was a little like Nushka was kind of an adjustment for me, and Nushka kind of resembles crypto. Like she's a little mini crypto a little bit.
Hyper.
Yeah, yeah. If you see every time she comes home, she's like flying like crypto. Like every time my mom comes back home, she's like just doing flips, and she's like, oh my goodness, Nushka, yeah. I already mentioned like Lois. His relation with his parents is probably my favorite part of this movie, and it's not explored
A
as
lot.
a lot, But I did like what I saw. Like I think hopefully we see more of that. Because that's one of the things in the previous Superman movies that differs is one or both parents are gone in the previous adaptations. So it will be cool to kind of see uh, how the other, how they interact with integrate in his lives even more, especially if things with Lois get serious. Is there the chance that him and Lois get married and have kids? Yeah,
That could be possible.
because the thing is, one of the future Batman films, like because we also, I mean, we do have Robert Pattinson's the Batman movies, but we will have a separate I feel like, I mean, if Superman was gonna open to like, I don't know, like a event close to an Avengers opening weekend, I could see them exploring the possibility of integrating the Batman but into the universe. But I feel like because it's not going to make like eight, it's not going to make 900 million $1 billion. I feel like keeping this Batman separate and maybe introducing a new Batman into this universe makes the most sense down the road, especially if they're going to make this Batman a father. Because in the comics, Batman has a kid with Talia al Ghul, Damian Wayne, who ends up becoming his new Robin. Like he's had a few Robins, and then his biological son eventually, well, first becomes Dick Grayson, the former Robin, Nightwing's Robin. Then he becomes his father's Robin, and that's if they're going to explore that, then it makes me believe that we will see Superman and Lois. They, they probably will go that direction, especially since Superman and Lois was so well received because Superman was a dad in that show, and he was seen in such a different light than what average viewers are used to seeing with the character. They're used to seeing maybe he is with Lois, maybe he's not. They're not used to seeing him as a father, and that was probably one of the things I liked about Across the Spider Verse. This is probably the first big screen interpretation of Peter Parker being a father, which I liked, and a lot of fans like that too. Like, there's something interesting. I think when you have heroes for decades be single and not marry and not tie. We assume that marriage, like you remember the episode? I was watching the episode with Full House where Becky and Jesse get married, and one of the things Jesse feared was this is the end of his adventure, and then Becky's like, no, it's the start of a new adventure. Like we assume because when I was engaged in my past relationship, we still had our adventures. We still went on our solo adventure outings too. We don't have to change who we are because we're married. And I think that's the point that the last few decades of comic book writers and other writers is it's okay to have your heroes grow up because they don't really grow up in the end. They're still like a kid at heart. A lot of adult parents today are kids at heart. We're in our 30s. We have gaming consoles. We have our now some parents now that are in their 60s and 70s own a gaming console. And that's kid stuff, right? But we're a kid at heart. It's okay to be a kid at heart, and it's okay. I mean, Batman never really had a childhood, so he's always kind of been like he's never been able to grow. He's never been able to be a kid. So the fact that he's a dad now, it's an interesting story. So with Superman, he had a loving family, And and it's interesting because I don't know if they ever explored this in the story, but Superman kind of like I'm sure he has respect for Batman because he did foster orphans to live with him, like just like how his foster parents, adoptive parents, took care of him, and he considers Dick Grayson a son, Jason Todd a son, Tim Drake a son, as much as he does Damien. Doesn't blood doesn't have to be the be all end all of being a family member. Like I can appreciate my parents marrying somebody else and can view them almost on the level as a biological parent. Like my step grandmother Nancy, she's just as much a grandparent as the other ones were. Or my grandma's last boyfriend, same thing. And having and that's been a really big theme for the comic book movies is having a family uh, that's well written to make for an interesting story. And I would like to see how Batman, because that is something we have not seen on the big screen before. What Batman is like being a father. And I don't think Robert Pattinson is at that stage yet to be that. You might need a Batman who's a little bit older, or it could be the same age. Depends on who they cast. My choice for the DCU Batman, Scott Eastwood, son of Clint Eastwood. And I don't know if Nick Tammy, you know who Clint Eastwood is. I'm sure you do. Cowboy
Yeah,
director.
kind of.
Yeah, his son. Well, first of all, there's a comic book Batman, The Dark Knight Returns, where he was inspired by Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry was a big influence on that character, and Dirty Harry was played by Clint Eastwood. So his son Scott playing Batman would be kind of an interesting full circle moment. He's not known for a lot of big franchise movies, and he wasn't a DC. He was in Suicide Squad 2016. He had a small role in that, but yeah, I mean that would be he's definitely a father figure type of person. So yeah, I think so. I think the one thing that I want to see, I'll say one last thing about the future of DC Studios: explore themes, explore relationships that we have not seen on the big screen before. And I think having both of Superman's parents around is one of those things. Having like this is the first time. I mean, we've seen like there was a brief cameo of Superman and Supergirl on the big screen together in the Flash, but this was the first time we saw Superman and Supergirl talk to each other on the big screen. I like that. I like that they've already have an established relationship. I'd like to see more of that. I'm sure we will in future movies. We saw Peacemaker, he's the character who's been kind of bridging the gap between the previous DC movies and this new universe, and we're going to see that explored in the next month in the new Peacemaker shows. Show us more of these characters' relationships and how they bounce off each other. Because sometimes Marvel would do that, but there's also films where we expect, like for example, like in there's the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness movie. We saw WandaVision. We expected one or two characters to show up, because it made sense for them to show up. They didn't, and so if a character like we're okay, like in Supergirl, if a battle's hard, or if she gets kryptonite and Superman has to take her to a red sun to heal. I mean, it would make sense for him to be there. And sometimes it doesn't always make sense for a hero to be there. Like Wonder Woman showed up in Shazam: Fury of the Gods, and brought Shazam back to life. I guess because she's the power of the god. I mean, that's cool. I mean, that was a cool scene, but like, how, why, like, I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe if she got involved in the battle, and then she saw like maybe she had like a kind of like a special globe that the you know what's the guy's name, Shazam the wizard, like, his powers are off the scale, I should go help. you know you gotta so having them be absent for no reason, but also having them show up for no reason, you have to give the characters a purpose, whether they show up or not. And so I want to see more of that. I want to see more of when a character, like if a certain scenario calls for the character to show up, like we could be watching Lanterns and one day, I don't know, they're in Gotham City and then they see Batman on the roof. I'm like, oh shit, it's Batman. Oh hey Batman, and he just gets annoyed and just goes away. Like, he's just like, leave me alone. Let me do my job. Just it has to make sense. And that's what I want to see explored. But that's my conclusion of everything I've been saying about Superman. And now I think the last topic we want to talk about are upcoming shows. We could try doing this again next Sunday if you want. We could do another podcast. Maybe we'll try to do a little better setup this time. We have a song ready to go. I want to thank my buddy Travis Colin making the. We're gonna have a new theme ready to go. Maybe we'll make an edited version of this with the theme. If not, we will do this. I want to see how this sounds, and we're gonna just kind of experiment a little bit. And then we can. Then yeah, we'll have it. We'll have it. The next episode ready in a more professional setting, and see where it goes from there. But thank you, Tammy. I know this was your first time doing something like this, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not familiar, so probably the next few time I'll get in.
Yeah, I mean, we're just getting a feel for things. We're just kind of, because one time, every time I do one of these live streams, I'm like, I just kind of just say what's on my mind. It's always cool when somebody like responds in an email or sends. Let me see if I got any. Oh, okay. We got a few comments from Omid. All right, Omid. I mean, sorry I didn't respond. I was all right. Let's see. Yo, J Ro, what am I do? Say hi. Isabella said it was super hot. She was pretty hot. Omid says hi to Tammy.
I don't need.
I can barely hear her, by the way. Batman. This is why Superman. Yep, Batman and Robin. Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in, Omid. I don't know if anyone else showed up, but yeah, we'll thanks for the feedback. Yeah, we'll definitely do a show with you as possible. Leave a comment after this video is done airing, and tell us the tools, the kind of microphones you and Nate use for your podcast. Because yeah, me and Tammy want this to be a regular thing, and you're welcome. We'll have you on a guest sometimes. I know you and Nate, you're busy with your thing, but you're always welcome. I always do love doing shows with you as well. You're really good at talking about these things as well. But thanks for listening. Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Oh yeah, let's talk about upcoming events. So Tammy and I, we might do a podcast while we're down in Anaheim next month. I think we might talk about, because this will be our first vacation with a boyfriend. I haven't been to Disneyland in like 10 years, so this will be an interesting experience. What's changed? Obviously, the Star Wars stuff down there is a big deal. I want to check that out, and then I think we're going to. I'm going to go see the Beach Boys August 22nd, and then I'm going to go see Oasis with my brother on September 6th. So probably won't be a show then, but the following show I will talk about that, and then November, my birthday, we're going to go see Jesse McCartney. I think I'll probably talk about Young Justice a little bit when we do that show. But that'll be it. Thanks for people for tuning in. So I think this will wrap things up here for now. Any final words, son?
No. You about sum everything up?
Yeah. And we're gonna try to go to New York in December. So yeah, our show is just basically whatever's on our mind, and we'll talk about anything, and the topic interests you. Like, we want the show to have some variety, and we got one more viewer coming in. Let's give it a good 2 minutes before I wrap things up. See if anyone wants to comment. All right, speak now, or forever hold your peace. good hour long podcast. I think that's a good amount of time usually. I don't want to really do stuff for more than an hour. So I think we'll wrap it up. So yeah, we'll do this next week, and we'll try to do it a little more professionally. And everyone have a good weekend.